Beejel, and on another special episode of Be Epic Today. And a few days ago, actually on Monday, the 6th of July, I asked a question on Facebook, which was something along the lines of, if you could only recommend one book for personal or business development, what would it be? Now, the reason I asked this question wasn't to get a whole bunch of likes and comments. Essentially, I had 4 credits available to me on Audible, and I wanted to use them up and basically put my Audible account on pause so I had a chance to catch up on the books I hadn't read. But I had to use these 4 credits, otherwise I would use them. Anyway, 80 plus comments later, and those are basically 80 book suggestions later, I now have a library of books to refer back to. Now, the good thing is, many of those books I've either read or still actually own. So the question is, what book would I recommend if I could only recommend one book? That's a tough question. When I asked it, I really wasn't thinking about me answering that question. I just kind of asked it to get some opinions on books maybe I hadn't thought about. And there's definitely a few that I've picked out and actually used up my 4 credits since then. But if I could only recommend one book, what would it be? Now, this is a recent, I won't say recent, so essentially in 2010, when we had to leave the US, we pretty much got rid of all of our books. And I vowed never to kind of collect books again. Despite my best efforts, that didn't happen, and we somehow accumulated a bunch of new books. And of the many things that we have to let go of in our life, getting rid of books is a tough one for me. So one of these days, I'm going to have Yogi help me actually go through this collection and really decide, am I really going to ever look at it again, or is it something I can let go of? So of this collection, which book do you think I would recommend if I could only recommend one book? Well, since this is my live, I'm going to cheat a little bit and recommend a couple of books depending on where you're at in your business. So let me kind of go through the lineup here, and I'll come back to the one book that I'm going to recommend, okay? So a lot of people I work with are solopreneurs or micropreneurs, and most have one thing in common. They have a hard time getting things done. They have a hard time getting the right things done. And if that's you, I'm going to recommend at least starting off with this. There's several books in this category, but Eat That Frog is one of them. It's essentially a bunch of productivity tips. But more importantly, I'm going to say read The One Thing, and that's probably on here somewhere as well, I believe, over here, which is The One Thing. Definitely going to recommend, you read The One Thing. The other one, which I don't believe I have a physical copy, but I have it on my Kindle, is Deep Work. No, I don't have that one on here, is Deep Work. So essentially, this is what I feel where so many solopreneurs are going off track, which is not that they're lazy, but they're doing too many different things, and they spend a lot of times doing things that don't produce a result. Now, that's just some general stuff here. So if you are running an organization, I'm going to recommend the Traction suite of books, which is Traction, Rocket Fuel, and What the Heck is EOS? That's my recommendation if you're running a team of people. At least one of the books there. The E-Myth is another good book. Several people recommended E-Myth as their book of choice. Another book which is written by a friend of mine, one of the leading business coaches in India, is Lead or Bleed. That's a great book on management and leadership, but also applicable to a lot of entrepreneurs. This is one of my favorite books too, which is kind of Follow Your Heart. Again, it's easy to read, but it's a fun read there. But if I could only recommend one book, what would it be? So this book I actually listened to. I didn't read that book, to be honest with you, at the back end of last year. And it was towards the back end of a 10-year business relationship. And I realized that had we used this book as one of our management books or a guide to running our business, I think we would have created a multi-million-dollar business that we could have sold and really retired on, okay? but we didn't. And that's why I'm a big fan of this particular book. Now, as I said, this is the book I'm referring to, okay? It's Principles by Ray Dalio. Now, it's a thick book, so I'm all about saving time, and maybe you don't need to read the whole book to get the essence and the importance of this book. But when I talk about principles, think about core beliefs, guiding values, and I believe when we create a set of principles that we choose to abide by, live by, and we know these principles, when applied, will keep us on track to success, it's going to make a huge difference. So first of all, you've got to know what those principles are. Maybe some of those principles are actually going against how you currently show up in the world, and that's where you can do some course correction. Now, as I said, I listened to this book on multiple drives to LA and back. So for those of you who like easier stuff, and this is, I did read this book, okay? This is almost like the kids version, but I mean, it's written for adults, but it's a kids version. It's a picture book version of that big book, okay? And I believe if you can shortcut a lot of deep learning, you can. So this is the picture book version of Principles, but I highly recommend it. You can also find a great 30-minute summary of this book, and maybe I'll put a link to that 30-minute summary on YouTube. It's well worth the watch. You're going to get the core idea. And I'm all about, hey, do we really have to fill our minds with all this stuff? Now, in theory, if I implemented a fraction of the percent of stuff in these books, I would be a lot more successful in business than I am today. Okay, so just being very frank with you, I think a lot of you may agree that if we just had implemented some of the stuff in these books, maybe even just one of these books, would have been a lot more successful than we are today. Now, some people might say, hey, that's not me. I'm super successful. If that's you, ignore what I just said, okay? But again, coming from 10 years of working with entrepreneurs, 10 years of most of my friends being entrepreneurs, I know that we have a very hard time turning what we learn, our knowledge, into implementable action items and results. There's a gap somewhere, which is interesting because a lot of the info marketers, the gurus out there are constantly going on about learn more, learn more, learn more. But what if it's not about learning more? What if it's about actually unlearning a lot of stuff and focusing on just a little bit and implementing it to the nth degree? Again, this goes back to deep work, right? Which is, what if you just take one of these books and implement it in our business? Could it be a lot better than just filling our minds up with more and more content? I don't believe that content is what's holding us back from the success we desire. I think that we are often too far stretched. I think we're doing way too much. And I think that we always feel there's something more to learn, and hence never actually get around to implementing what we learn. And again, Principles sets up a parameter for you that you can actually create a guideline of what to learn and when, which is why I feel it's such a powerful concept. Again, I'm not saying it's the right book for everybody. I'm just saying if I had to only recommend one book of the many books here, what would it be? And again, it's going to be Principles. Okay, it's going to be this book here. It was so profound when I again listened to it. I listened to it and I bought the book, and honestly, I basically used the book for showing people what I listened to, which is kind of stupid, but there you go. Okay, no one said we do smart things all the time. So my invitation to you is that if you had to pick one book, what would it be? What can we take from that book and apply it today, right? So even though this is the book I'm going to recommend, I've learned what I need to learn to a degree of that book. But what do I need to learn next in what I'm doing? So what I'm reading right now is Essentialism, which is learning how to really select the core elements of life essential to what we are doing in life right now versus having more stuff. So my goal here is to have less stuff. And so we're kind of going to another deep cleanse of the home, decluttering, but not just of physical stuff, right? When we talk about decluttering, my wife is the expert in this subject matter. This is, again, but we look at this because we had our most powerful transformation when we decluttered. We decluttered our stuff. We decluttered our mind. We decluttered our digital stuff. We decluttered our paperwork. We essentially decluttered so much that for 5 years, we're essentially able to live out of 4 bags. We're not actually live out of 4 bags. We weren't living in the 4 bags. We carried the 4 bags, but essentially everything we owned was in those 4 bags, plus a few utensils and stuff. But those were the 5 best years of our life, okay? And there has to be a deep connection here. There has to be a connection between less stuff and more value on life, more value on relationships. And after coming back to America, we had to re-accumulate stuff. We didn't have to. It just happened, right? We accumulated stuff. We had to go out and buy kitchen stuff and buy furniture stuff and buy this stuff. And those 3 months after we came back to America were probably some of the most stressful in our life, in our marriage. We squabbled over little stupid stuff. What plates we were going to buy, what towels we were going to buy, little stuff, and you don't see it. It's almost like you're being cooked alive by the stuff value. And because we had to accumulate so much stuff to reorganize our home, everything was compressed. So what people might do over years, we did over 3 months to get ourselves back into the American way of life, having stuff. And we just realized as time went on that this stuff was not making us happy. So even though we went through the experience of decluttering, even though we went through the experience of less stuff equals more joy in life, when we were allowed to put stuff back into our life, we did it. We did it it just happened. And until it takes conscious effort, even to this day, even though my Yogi, my wife, she's out there daily helping people declutter, it's a battle. It's a battle against stuff. And why is it important? Because this is all stuff too. I feel that we get sucked into this belief that we read all this stuff is going to make our life happier, more successful. And I'm telling you, based on the results of people at large, it's not the case. Some of the people with the most books have achieved the least significance in life. And if I have to one takeaway here, it's how do we declutter this? How do we declutter our minds so that our mind becomes so sharp, so focused on that one thing that we need to be doing right now? Again, that's why this would be a close second runner-up, okay? The one thing. When we can put some of this stuff back into our lives, I believe we'll do far better by having 1 or 2 books on our shelf that we learn, we absorb, we implement, than having all of these. Now, I'm sitting here telling you this, guilty of the very accusation I'm telling you not to do, right? But I'm telling you because somehow hindsight is a great effing coach. It's so much easier to go through these challenges and then become the expert, right? So I'm telling you, as somebody who did it the wrong way, not to do it, right? And most of you will not listen to me, which is the way of life. But if this message rings true for you, I'm telling you that there's probably 1 or 2 books right now out there that will be the game changer for you. You might already own that book. You may want to look at your bookshelf and say, okay, if I can just keep one book and implement it to the nth degree, what result would it create for me in my life, in my business, in my career? And do it. Be brave enough to declutter everything else and select those few books. Now, there are some books which are reference books. There's some books here which I go back to, such as this selection of books here, right? Why? Because when I coach my hiring clients, I'm going back to Traction as resource books on management optimization. So there are some books here which are more reference books which I go back to. But I'm talking about either it's a motivational book or a concept book that once you've read it, can you move into implementation and then actually move the book on? So here's what we're doing. Next week, I'm going to be putting myself into this, what I just told you to do, right? But because I'm pretty lousy at doing it myself with books, I'm going to have my wife help me. And I'm going to have to answer her questions of, am I going to read this book ever again? Is there a practical reason for having this book still, or can I pass it on and pass that knowledge to somebody else? And we're going to be doing a big wisdom exchange exercise of passing some of these books on. I'm having an anxiety attack just saying this. As I'm saying this, looking at my books like my babies. I'm going to letting go of my babies. But even a parent has to let go of their babies at some point in time, right? So letting go is one of the highest spiritual practices. Let's see who we got. Morali. There's also principles. Morali, I don't believe any of those other 80 people, I could be wrong, but I don't believe any of those other 80 people mentioned the book Principles, which I thought was pretty profound that no one else did. So thank you for mentioning that. Yogi, yeah, you'll have our work cut out for us next week. Cool. So here's what do I recommend? The book Principles. If you don't like big reads, do what I did, which is buy the picture book version of Principles. A close second is The One Thing, but really it's books on simplification. And I hope that's been useful to you. Again, if you want help bridging the gap between knowledge of what you know you should be doing, and actually doing it, get in touch with me. We have a program. It's a price of coffee a day, but we really help entrepreneurs stay on that narrow path of turning what they know into actionable items, helping entrepreneurs declutter their options, declutter the number of things that they're focused on, so they really start creating results, which is so critical right now with everything that's going on. So if you want help, reach out to me. But that's my book collection, and next week you're going to see me go through these books and get rid of a few of them, one or two of them, maybe a lot of them. I don't know. We'll see how ruthless my wife is in guiding me through this process. So if you want to see me go through that process, stay tuned. It's going to be painful for me, fun for you. But until then, we'll see you soon. Bye for now.